Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's live demo of CyberStrong and Synced Crosswalking. My name is Ethan Bresnahan. I'm the marketing director here at CyberSaint, and today I'm excited to welcome sales engineer Michael Bloomrich. We're so glad that you can join us, and as always, feel free to submit questions throughout the demonstration. And with that, I will hand things off to Michael. So glad you can join us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ethan. Pleasure everyone that's able to join us today. A preemptive happy Thanksgiving holiday, and I hope you all have safe travels and enjoyable celebrations. I'm really excited about speaking with you all today regarding our sync crosswalking capabilities. And let me get my screen shared here, and we can get this kicked off. Give me one moment. So in terms of our sync crosswalking, something that I really want to start off with is the why. Why did we build this in the first place? My background is in GRC consulting, and in something that I did more than enough of, and I never want to go back to it, is essentially the manual crosswalking component. And what that involved were some really beautifully constructed spreadsheets. But essentially, we were looking at pivot tables. We were looking at, just a lot of, self-built algorithms, if you will, looking at phrase matching and looking at terminology and sentence matching. But is there a better way to do it? And the answer is yes. And that's essentially where we came in a number of years ago. With our data scientist and with our chief product officer and a few others in our organization. Essentially, what we're looking at is looking at the intent behind the language and being able to not just understand, phrases or again, word matching, but, saying, okay, what is the statement actually saying and how can we map that systematically and programmatically across multiple frameworks? This has become more important in recent years, especially because of the global nature of businesses and how they have shifted. So now where organizations used to be able to say, okay, let's show compliance with PCI or let's show compliance with HIPAA, and that's enough. Now you're looking at the need to show compliance with PCI, HIPAA, GDPR, NYDFS, CCPA. Just throw an acronym out and you're going to hit something. So how can we do that as seamlessly as possible? So how crosswalking works, again, I mentioned the intent-based component behind it. Now, there are other, either products or kind of NLP type scenarios on the market today that are saying, oh yeah, we look at this. And that's kind of the nature of natural language processing, is the intent behind the language. But what we're doing is we're taking the black box out of it. We're actually within the system allowing you to see what our confidence scores are behind the corresponding mappings. And then to even make this faster than it already is, excuse me, and I'll show you how quick this is in just a moment in the system. We're also allowing kind of pre-built templates available to you. And that's something that we're working on or going to roll out later this year. But really the goal is to allow for you and your teams to be able to assess once and apply to many. Assess against NIST, assess against PCI, against NYDF, again, whatever it might be. And now let's look at the confidence score and see, okay, where are these mappings occurring? Where is the highest level of confidence? And now what that allows for is you assess once, you run through our automated crosswalking process through the CyberStrong platform UI. And what that essentially spits out is now, instead of a 0% completed assessment, it's a 50, 60, 70% completed secondary assessment or tertiary assessment based on the initial inputs. The last piece in terms of the value and impact, I think I've already touched upon some of this, that real-time component. And that's what I'm really excited about talking with you on today, is the sync crosswalking piece, especially for organizations that may have found themselves in a new kind of in a new regulatory landscape. whether they're shifting into a new market, whether you are expanding into a larger space, and therefore, different regulators are essentially knocking at your door. Having the capability of being able to say, okay, we need to show compliance against, these frameworks, this set of frameworks. Let's start with one. Let's map them across the many, and let's do this as seamlessly as possible. So that's kind of the quick version of what I'm going to be showing you today. And from there, let's get into it. So in terms of the CyberStrong platform, and give me just a second, I'm going to turn off my camera so you're not looking at the side of my face here. All right. So at this point, you'll notice a couple of different assessments that you see here. We have a synced NIST to ISO, a synced NIST to PCI. I'll get to those in just a second. What I want to start with is how easy it is to set up the crosswalking and the cross-mapping component within the system. There is no, programmatical element to it. You don't have to run any algorithms yourselves. You essentially go to administration, to assessments, and from here, you select what is your starting point? What is your starting assessment? Is it NERC CIP? Is it ISO? Is it NIST 853? Out to the side, we have the crosswalking icons. And these are all essentially an indicator that depending upon what you select, you can then crosswalk against various assessments. A lot of our clients, they start with 853 because it is such a kind of all-encompassing framework, and you can go in many different directions from there. But what this allows for is now I can go and select, all right, do I want to crosswalk against PCI or CIS, power controls, etc. Once you make that selection, then this is where the black box essentially goes away. I can go and I can take one of two directions. I can either add top mappings for each control. So you'll notice right here, we have 0 accepted mappings. I can go and add my top mappings for each control. Now I have the multiple accepted mappings. At this point, again, there's still a little bit of mystery. Click into a control. This is where the confidence score is available to you, and you have the capability of going through and selecting additional mappings. So essentially, for each of those mappings that take place, and actually if I go back here, for each of those mappings that take place, I can go to the next control, say, okay, I can do the same thing. This is another kind of corresponding and underlying control action statement that is now going to be mapped based on our systematic approach. And what this allows for, especially when it comes to synced crosswalking, is when I go to my next step, I create my assessment and I essentially link these two assessments together. This truly encompasses the ideal of assess once, apply to many. If I go back to this homepage and I go into one of these synced assessments, I'll go to my synced NIST to PCI, for instance. When I go into the underlying controls themselves, you'll notice that this is 96% project completed. And this is going through the same process that I just showed you here. When I dive into one of these underlying controls, you'll notice we have crosswalk history. This is the framework, and this is the control that is tied back to this specific control action. So this is completely auditable in regards to what is happening today. And what this means is, as I go back, so let's say, okay, I'm not liking what I'm seeing from a scoring perspective in this crosswalking area. If I go back to this overarching control and I say, okay, actually, this is not fully implemented, or I don't agree with the completion cost, and I think this should actually be a completion cost of 0 because we are fully implemented, or if I want to assign this to an individual, if I want to go in and complete risk assessment criteria, all of these data points are now subsequently mapped to the child assessment. So if I go back to my NIST to PCI, I go back to this first one here, then essentially those changes that I'm making in relation to the crosswalk history And as I'm going through, these are going to reflect here on this page as well. So that's the whole component of assess once and apply to many. Where this really gets interesting is if you need to show compliance not only with NIST 853, but also with PCI, also to ISO 27001 and other frameworks as well. What this will allow for is you to set up the assessments in such a way to where you have that parent assessment. In this case, NIST. I've already created the synced crosswalking from NIST to PCI. I've created it to ISO. I can do the same exact thing again. And what this allows for now is I can complete simultaneously. I'll do this for, HIPAA, for instance. I'll add my top mappings. I'll go to my next step. Synced. And I'll make sure I keep this synced. Within less than 30 seconds and just a couple of clicks, this is now something where mappings have occurred once again. And if I go into one of these assessments, you'll see here is what it is mapped back to. So now by just completing NIST 853, I am now completing 4 assessments simultaneously. Again, assess once, apply to many. And it's going back to the leveraging of the natural language processing piece, taking the black box out of it, being able to showcase the capabilities of our confidence scoring in conjunction with our models. And something else that I also want to point out when it comes to automation and continuous control automation. I don't know how many of you are leveraging different systems, whether it's AWS, Azure, Tenable, Qualys, etc. But a lot of the times when you're integrating data from those systems, it comes in and it kind of goes into a black hole, if you will. And you're like, okay, I have to go find the data that I've now implemented into the platform, and I need to make that data actionable. So when it comes to continuous control automation, we can take this even a step further. And this is where things get really, really interesting. Essentially, with these continuous control automation pieces, for instance, an Azure integration, if this control and this control action are mapped back to ISO or PCI, HIPAA, again, name an acronym, then what this means is by having this integration tied back directly to this control action, you're now not only showing compliance or non-compliance against this one statement, but across multiple statements, across multiple frameworks, and you're doing so instantaneously through our synced crosswalking capabilities. So especially for those individuals that may be part of a smaller team and you're really looking to maximize value, this is something that allows you to do that in a very again user-friendly way. And the system is the one that is taking the brunt of the burden on it, not you. I'm going to stop there for any questions. Ethan, I don't know if any have come up as of yet.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. We did get a couple of questions along the way. I think you might have kind of stumbled into an answer for one of them, but it might be worth revisiting just quickly. We have someone asking about, we feed in our Tenable input?
Yes.
I know you quickly touched on the CCA component there.
Yeah. So with the Tenable piece, we're able to essentially tie in basic tenable information pertaining to, when has the scan run, has it been a successful run or not, and we're able to tie that back to various controls within again various frameworks, just depending upon your organizational needs.
Awesome. This may be more of a CCA question and less of a crosswalking question. But someone just wrote automatic attestation.
Automatic attestation. Interesting. I mean, I would love to know more about what they mean by that. Whoever,
Yes.
could you give me a little more context?
Yes. So we'll say if whoever submitted that question, feel free to add some context. But if you would like to dive deeper, especially when it comes to the attestation portion, definitely feel free to reach out. If you are an existing CyberStrong customer, feel free to reach out to your CSM. Or if you'd like to, if you are not a CyberSaint customer yet, feel free to reach out at info@cybersaint.io or visit us at cybersaint.io. While we wait for any last minute questions to trickle in, Michael, thank you so much for the time today. This was great and very exciting. Oh, I see. Attestation is in that will say that like binary, like encryption is a yes or a no. I think this is more of a CCA question.
Yeah, that is. So I mean, it's gonna depend on the integration itself and kind of how that correlates. But depending upon that integration point, yes, that is something that we would be able to map. So the whole component behind our integrations within the CyberStrong platform is, again, we're not just dumping data into the platform itself, and then you have to go and sift through it and derive, the meaning of it. We're mapping this directly to corresponding controls. So, again, depending upon where the data is coming from, we're able to map that accordingly to controls, not only across NIST, but many other frameworks as well, to derive that action from there and determine, is this compliant, is this not compliant, based on those parameters.
Right. Yes. Interesting. Sorry, we're getting some more context for the attestation portion. Attestation, I love it, equals knowing the controls are mapped and comply. Automation with attestation saves the ISSO time and show me the controls implemented. Seems like this is a rather unique, or not necessarily unique, but especially the specifics of this might benefit as opposed to a one-sided conversation.
So yeah, I was going to say, it sounds almost a little more audit specific in terms of like verifying that the controls have been mapped accordingly and that the information has been mapped accordingly, and being able to attest to that fact. Again, the individual is asking this, feel free to reach out to us, and I'm happy to have a conversation with you on that. And we can take this further. But no, I'm very interested in knowing more about the specific use case.
Absolutely. Yes. For whoever is submitting those questions, definitely please do reach out. Would love to dive deep. But unless we have any other questions, Michael, appreciate the time. And for anyone who's interested in learning more about our CCA integrations, please definitely stay on top of. We're going to be working on a series. Michael's going to be presenting on a series of our integrations. We already have one up, actually, ironically enough, from Tenable. So if you'd like to learn more about the Tenable integration, definitely check out the Bright Talk channel as well. And we'll be diving into those over the next couple of weeks and into the new year. But Michael, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, Ethan. Thank you, everyone that's attended, and happy holidays.
Bye.